morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's County Council meeting, and we do apologize for the short delay due to technical difficulties. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the opening with a prayer and pledge allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to remind everyone to keep their mask on. Unless they are talking, they can pull the mask down as they're talking into the mic so that your voice isn't muffled. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Consent agenda passes. All right, this time we have a proclamation for World Rivers Day. Ms. Kate Patton, Executive Director of the Lower Shore Land Trust. If you could meet Councilman Hastings at the podium.
All right. Ms. Patton was unable to attend, but we do have Victoria Spice here instead. This proclamation is for World Rivers Day, celebrated on the fourth Sunday in September. World Rivers Day is a global event that started in 2005 in celebration of the world's waterways. And whereas this day is awareness, highlights many of the values of our rivers and strives to increase public awareness and encourages improved stewardship of all the rivers around the world. And whereas among many other benefits, rivers provide food and nutrition, support transportation of goods, provide recreation, and support the needed habitat of various flora and fauna. And whereas World Rivers Day was launched by the United Nations in 2005 and now spans across more than 70 countries, and now therefore the Wicomico County does hereby proclaim September 27th, 2020 as World Rivers Day in Wicomico County and encourages all the citizens to celebrate our local rivers and tributaries, done this day, the 15th of September, signed by all the members of the County Council. We have Victoria here. Victoria, you'd like to say quick words?
Yes, please. Good morning. Thank you. So my name is Victoria Spice. I'm the Invasive Species Coordinator with the Lower Shore Land Trust. Kate wasn't able to make it, but I am very happy to be here on her behalf. So thank you for this. Our rivers are so very important to the local economy, health, and well-being of the Lower Shore. In celebration of World Rivers Day, our organization has created River Rally. It's a month-long event where we are challenging families and outdoor enthusiasts to hike, bike, paddle, or walk 30 miles during the month of September. Rivers all over our country and within our watershed face an array of threats. It's events like these that increase public awareness and encourage stewardship of the Wicomico, Nanticoke, Pocomoke, and beyond. So thank you again for the great leadership, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you. And I also have some stickers for the River Rally that I'd like to hand out to you guys, and I'll leave the rest up at the table here if anybody else would like some and would like to participate in our event. Yep.
Thank you very much.
That's great.
Thank you, Victoria.
Is Ms. Hardy here? All right, if you could go to the podium. I'll let Ms. Ackley go first. Ms. Ackley will be offering a proclamation for National Recovery Month.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Hardy. This is a proclamation for National Recovery Month. Whereas National Recovery Month is held every September to educate Americans that substance use treatment and mental health services can enable those with substance and/or mental health disorders to recover and live a healthy life and rewarding life. Whereas National Recovery Month celebrates the gains made by those in recovery and reinforces the positive message that behavioral health is essential to overall health. Prevention works, treatment is effective, and people can and do recover. Whereas millions of Americans' lives have been transformed through recovery, and Recovery Month provides a vehicle to celebrate these accomplishments. Speaking about the gains made by those in recovery and sharing success stories helps increase awareness and furthers a greater understanding about the disease of mental and substance use disorders. Now therefore, the Wicomico County Council hereby proclaims September as National Recovery Month in Wicomico County and encourages all citizens to celebrate those who are in recovery and give support and hope for those struggling with substance abuse disorders. Ms. Hardy, would you like to say a few words?
On behalf of Wicomico County Health Department, our health officer, Lori Brewster, we accept this. And also on behalf of the local Behavioral Health Authority, we thank Wicomico County Council government for the support of our recovery events throughout the month of September. We know that recovery is important to individuals, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackley, and thank you, Ms. Hardy. Ms. Hardy, you can stand up there. We also want to recognize September as National Suicide Prevention Month. I think a lot of us have been affected. We know somebody, we're related to somebody that ultimately took their life, whether it's a firefighter, a police officer, paramedic, soldier, or even somebody's child. It happens a lot around here, and we do recognize that. So this proclamation for National Suicide Prevention Month, whereas National Suicide Prevention Month is held every September to promote resources and awareness around the issues of suicide prevention and educate individuals on how to talk about suicide without increasing the risk of harm. And whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, religion, or background, and each year more than 41,000 people die by suicide. And whereas local mental health professionals are on the front lines of a battle many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain topics too taboo to talk about, and whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life's struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. Now, therefore, the Wicomico County Council hereby proclaims September as National Suicide Prevention Month in Wicomico County and encourages all citizens to check on their well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors as a simple gesture that can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. Done this 15th day of September 2020, signed by all the council members of the Wicomico County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of Wicomico County Health Department, our health officer, and myself, the director of the local Behavioral Health Authority, we thank you for this proclamation. Suicide awareness is very important, not only for this community, but for worldwide. It is something that people do battle with. There is help, and individuals can always contact the local Behavioral Health Authority if they want to seek services at any time. They can also contact 211, press 1 for help. And we thank you. I thank you for the county council support and for Wicomico County government support of our agency in promoting suicide awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. This time, Mr. Taylor.
Good morning. This morning for public hearing, we have a total of 4 different legislative bills. The first 3 are a product, I guess the end product, of the effort that the council authorized several months ago regarding concerns about certain personnel, county personnel. The first of these is Legislative Bill 2020-07, an act to establish regulations regarding service by someone in a position for which confirmation by the county council is required, including sanctions for serving in such a position without confirmation and for aiding and abetting such conduct by amending the Wicomico County Code to include in Chapter 59 Personnel Rules and Article 3 titled Positions for which confirmation by council is required, and Sections 59-16 to 59-19. And this is for public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. At this time, we're going to open the floor to this public hearing for any public comments. Please state your name and county of residence. And this public hearing is for Legislative Bill number 2020-07 only. So do we have any public comments? Any public comments? All right, this time we're going to close the floor to the public hearing. I need a motion to approve Legislative Bill 2020-07.
So moved.
Got a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor of Legislative Bill 2020-07, we're going to do a roll call vote. Mr. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Ms. Ackley? Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. McCain?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Legislative Bill number 2020-07 passes unanimously. Second bill.
Second item is Legislative Bill number 2020-08, an act to establish a procedure for removal from office for violation of local laws, and that such removal is not subject to judicial review, and to provide for sanctions for continuing in office after removal by amending the Wicomico County Code to include in Chapter 59 Personnel Rules as Article 4, titled Removal from Office, and Sections 59-20 to 59-22.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the floor for this public hearing, and any public comments, please state your name and county of residence. Do we have any public comments? Any public comments? Okay, this time we're going to close the floor to this public hearing. I need a motion to approve Legislative Bill 2020-08.
So moved.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes.
there is one typo, just so it said, is within this section 59-22.
Okay.
Maybe it's not that important, but it does say he is, she shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. I think it should say he or she shall be guilty of a misdemeanor.
Okay, Ms. Harley, can we correct that?
Yes, we can correct that.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? All right, again, going to do a roll call vote. Mr. Cannon?
Aye.
Mr. Hastings?
Aye.
Ms. Ackley?
Aye.
Mr. Holloway?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. McCain?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Legislative Bill number 2020-08 passes unanimously. Third public hearing.
The third item is Legislative Bill 2020-09, an act to prohibit unauthorized increase in the salary for a position stated in the budget and to establish liability for any excess and sanction for payment thereof by amending the Wicomico County Code to include in Chapter 59 Personnel Rules and Article 5 titled Other Rules and Sections, pull my thing off here, 59-23. And I would note just before the public hearing, we have gotten some comments from the executive branch that don't pertain to the general purpose of this, which was to prevent the kind of broad or willy-nilly transfer of money around into increased salaries just for no particular reason. The concerns relate to what I would call regular salary increases based on primarily educational achievements. And I've suggested, and I think the executive branch, I believe, agrees, that we can meet and probably work this out fairly quickly. So I would suggest that at least after the public hearing, that the council defer action on this bill until the next meeting.
Okay, we're going to continue with the public hearing. So at this time, we're going to open the floor for the public hearing, and if there's any comments on this legislative bill, please state your name and your county of residence. Any public comments? All right, with that said, we're going to close the public hearing. Need a motion to approve well, do you want to postpone it? We don't need a motion to postpone.
No, I don't think you need a motion to check with Ms. Hurley just to make sure. She's the expert.
Yeah, at this point, the bill is still active. I mean, it's not dead yet, so we can just schedule that for the next meeting.
So we don't need to vote on it tonight?
You
or
do
today?
not. Mm-mm.
Okay, but we can continue to discuss it. I think Ms. Olin's here. I don't know if she has a comment.
I think that the general consensus is that Mr. Taylor and Ms. Olin are going to be meeting to discuss the language that's in the bill.
Okay, everybody good with that? All right, thank you, Ms. Olin. All right, the fourth public hearing.
Last item, number 4, is Legislative Bill 2020-10, an act to authorize borrowing as required by Section 507F3 of the county charter, not to exceed $2,928,292 for a water main and related facilities to furnish water service to the Salisbury, Ocean City, Wicomico Regional Airport, and for that purpose, the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds and notes constituting debt for which the faith and credit of the county is pledged, the appropriation of funds and levy of taxes for payment thereof, and certain other related actions and duties. And I don't think Mr. Pessota is here, but I would just mention before the public hearing, so everybody's aware of it, this is the borrowing portion of the money that was approved by the State Board of Public Works last fall for this water main extension. That approval also includes $1.5 million as a grant. The total cost of the project, assuming all this money is spent, plus a local share, would be in the range, I don't have an exact figure, of about $4.5 million.
Okay. All right, I'm going to open the floor to the public hearing. If there are any public comments, please state your name and county of residence. Any public comments? Any public comments? Okay, going to close the floor to public comments. Need a motion to approve Legislative Bill 2020-10.
So moved.
Got a motion, need a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor of Legislative Bill 2020-10 by roll call, Mr. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Ms. Ackley.
Aye.
Mr. Holloway.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Bill McCain.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Legislative Bill number 2020-10 passes. Ms. Ackley, you surprised me with that loud aye. Thank you. Ms. Hurley.
All right, good morning, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. You will notice on the agenda that we're going to continue with several more public hearings this morning. A public hearing notice was published in the Daily Times and posted on the website for each public hearing listed. Starting with public hearing on resolution number 92-2020. This is to amend the fiscal year 2021 capital budget and the fiscal year 2021-2025 capital improvement plan to add a project defined therein as aircraft rescue and firefighting, also known as ARF truck. and to appropriate funding for the project of $727,026 from 1, part of the grant awarded on the Federal CARES Act Airports Grants Program, and 2, a Maryland Aviation Administration, MAA, grant for the ARF truck. The council did hold a work session on this request on September the 1st, and there is an updated resolution on the council table for your consideration.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the floor to the public hearing. If there are any public comments, please state your name, county of residence. Any public comments? Any public comments? All right, need a motion to accept resolution number 92-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Hastings. Any discussion? Any discussion? Thank you for being here, Mr. Rudy. All in favor, resolution number 92-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 92-2020 passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. President, we do have the airport manager here with his assistant, if you want to allow him to do a quick introduction.
Yes, please step forward to the mic.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce Christopher Davidson. He is our new assistant airport manager here at the airport.
Good
morning. Thank you for having me.
Mask down so we recognize you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Do you want to introduce yourself? And
My name is Chris Davidson. Been here 4 weeks. I'm quite enamored with this area. It is just there's a lot happening here. It's very exciting to be a part of this growth that we're currently experiencing and what we're going to push forward. Happy to be here.
welcome to Wicomico County, and we appreciate you coming to this county. We like people that come here and appreciate what we have.
It's a great place.
Would you like to tell any of the public about your background or how you came here?
Well, so I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and left there for about 22 years while I was in the Marine Corps. I was in aviation the entire time as a pilot and a mechanic and working with the airport portion of the Marine Corps. Did that, retired back to Tennessee, started running an aviation airport out just right outside of Nashville, and this opportunity came along. I couldn't pass it up, so here I am.
Any more questions?
We'll throw out a quick, you may not know, but actually it was an Eastern Shoreman that founded Nashville, Tennessee. They actually left Salisbury area before it was known as Wicomico County, but and then actually moved down that area, and that's helped establish it. And so I partly take responsibility as on behalf of Wicomico residents for the success of Nashville. Thank you for being here.
That's some nice information there, Mr. Hastings. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Ms. Harley?
Okay. Next on the agenda is Resolution Number 93-2020. This is recommending the approval for the sale of a land preservation easement from McCain Farms, LLC, and Rural Integrity Land, LLC. The Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation's primary purpose is to preserve productive agricultural land and woodland to provide for the production of food and fiber. And this is accomplished by landowners voluntarily applying to sell an easement on their property that restricts development. Council held a work session on the application from McCain Farms LLC, as well as the next 3 agenda items, which also pertain to the sale of land preservation easements at the September 1st council meeting. And we do have Ms. Gloria Smith here from the Wicomico County Department of Planning and Zoning, if there are any questions.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor for the public hearing, and any comments, please state your name and county of residence. Do we have any public comments? Okay, this time we're going to close the floor to the public hearing. Need a motion to approve resolution number 94-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Davis. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Holloway. Any discussion? All in favor, resolution number 94-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 94-2020 passed unanimously.
Mr. President,
It was 93, I think.
I'd like to.
Was that 93 or 94?
93.
23.
Yeah, it was 93.
Okay, I
Yeah, you said
moved
94.
down one. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Ms. Hastings. Resolution number 93-2020 passes unanimously.
I would like to add to that abstention. I am friends with the landowner, so I want to abstain from that voting.
For which one?
For 93-2020.
93-2020. Okay. So we have one abstention? All right, we have one abstention. Okay, thank you. Ms. Hurley?
Next is a public hearing on resolution number 94-2020. This is recommending the approval for the sale of a land preservation easement from Porter Mill Properties, LLC.
Okay, going to open the floor again to the public hearing on resolution number 94-2020. Do we have any public comments? Any public comments? Okay, closing the floor to the public hearing. I need a motion to approve resolution 94-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of resolution 94-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Resolution, chair votes aye. Resolution number 94-2020 passed unanimously. Ms. Hurley.
Next is a public hearing on resolution number 95-2020. This is recommending the approval for the sale of a land preservation easement from McCain Farms, LLC.
Okay, going to open the floor to public hearing. Any public comments, please state your name and county of residence. Do you have any public comments? Okay, we're going to close the floor to the public hearing. Need a motion to approve resolution number 95-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
President Dodd, I'm abstaining from that vote.
Thank you.
And we're all friends with Mr. McCain, so I don't know whether we can, anyway.
So Councilman McCain is going to abstain from this vote. Any more discussion? All in favor of resolution number 95-2020, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 95-2020 passes with just one abstention.
Next is a public hearing on resolution number 96-2020, recommending the approval for the sale of a land preservation easement from MARVIC Associates, LLC.
Okay, this time we're going to open the floor for this public hearing. Any public comments, please state your name and county of residence.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Yes, could you go to the podium, please? And state your name and county of residence.
Mr. President, Victor Laws III, Wicomico County. I'm one of the 4 owners, 2 first cousins of mine, and my brother and I are the owners of MARVIC Associates. We would appreciate your approval, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Laws. All right, any more public comments? All right, with that said, we're going to close the hearing. Need a motion to approve resolution number 96-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion, do we have a second?
Second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of resolution number 96-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 96-2020 passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next is a public hearing on resolution number 97-2020, recommending the approval for the sale of a land preservation easement from William D. Todd Jr. and Mary J. H. Todd.
Okay, going to open the floor to the public hearing. Any comments? Please state your name and county of residence. Any public comments? All right, we're going to close the floor for the public hearing. I need a motion to approve resolution number 97-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of resolution number 97-2020, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 97-2020 passed unanimously. Ms. Hartley.
This is a public hearing on resolution number 98-2020. This is authorizing the acting county executive to apply and accept a grant award in an amount up to $1,027,708 from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development through the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG-CV, for activities to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus crisis. There is an updated resolution on the council table that clarifies that this resolution is to apply and accept the grant award. And we do have Lori Carter here, Director of Wicomico County Department of Planning and Zoning, and Mr. Jesse Drewer, who is a planner too, and they are participating remotely by Zoom. And then we have Mrs. Cheryl Meadows here with the Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, who is a potential subrecipient of this grant.
Okay, open the floor to this public hearing. If there are any public comments, please state your name and county of residence. You have any public comments? Okay, going to close the floor to the public hearing. Need a motion to approve resolution number 98-2020 and a second.
So moved.
Got a motion. Who was the second? Mr. Davis was the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion. Mr. Cannon,
I abstain.
you are going to abstain from this? Thank you. Do we have any more
President.
discussion?
I also need to abstain.
I have one other abstention. I have two abstentions. Any more discussion? All right. Moving on. All in favor of resolution number 98-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, resolution number 98-2020 passes with two abstentions. All right, Ms. Hurley?
Next, the acting county executive has submitted a reappointment to the Wicomico County Local Management Board. This board is to promote a safe, healthy, and stable environment for all Wicomico County children and families. Resolution number 99-2020 is confirming the reappointment of Ernest F. Davis as a member to the Wicomico County Local Management Board.
Right, I need a motion to approve resolution number 99-2020.
So moved.
Who made the motion?
Hastings.
Mr. Hastings, and I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. McCain. All in, any discussion? I do want to thank Mr. Davis for his commitment to this. I've had a couple conversations with him, and he seems to be passionate about this. So, any more discussion? All those in favor of resolution number 99-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 99-2020 passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Next for your consideration is resolution number 100-2020 SM, authorizing Feature Flooring, Inc. as a sole source vendor for the purchase and installation of Jet Rock products in the detention center and to waive the formal competitive bidding process for the purchase and installation of said Jet Rock products during the fiscal year 2021. This is for the purchase and installation of a kitchen floor using the Jet Rock products at the detention center, and Feature Flooring, Inc. is the original installer of the Jet Rock products in the Mid-Atlantic region. We have Mr. Nick Rice here, purchasing manager, if there are any questions.
Okay. Need a motion to approve resolution number 100-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hastings. Any discussion? Is there any
Yes.
discussion? Mr. Davis?
What is the Jet Rock products and why are they so significant in flooring?
If you guys could try to spread out some.
I'm really loud.
Okay.
Good morning, Nicholas Rice, purchasing agent for Wicomico County.
Pete Matthews, General Services Supervisor.
Ruth Colburn, Warden, Wicomico County Department of Corrections.
Can you answer the question?
Yes, so I'll let the warden and Pate kind of touch on the reasons why this product was selected, and then once the product was selected, it came down to this is the vendor that supplies or installs this product in our region.
I'm repeating your question, just please.
What is so significant about this product? Why is it the only product that I guess could use in this kitchen?
It's not the only product we could use, but it's the most efficient product. They can supply a turnkey operation where they will come in, remove the appliances, remove the fixtures, put their product down, put everything back in place, and they're saying 2 days?
Yeah, 2 to 3 days, so very little downtime, as well as the fact, part of that goes into they don't actually have to remove the existing floor. They float it right over the top of the floor that's there now.
And it's a troweled-on product, much like a concrete slurry. It's not an epoxy, so there's not a significant odor problem. And after discussion and doing some research on the product, it's really the most efficient and effective product we could use in that application. You prepare 1,000 meals a day?
Correct.
So in the meantime, at 1,000 meals a day, they're going to have to make arrangements for kitchen services if another company was in there and had them down for a week. The way we understand this process is they'll still be able to work in the kitchen because this is going to be done after hours. They'll still be able to work in the kitchen when they need to use the kitchen, and it should not interrupt service to an extent that would be detrimental to the facility. That's really it in a nutshell.
So you've used it before, the same type surface?
We have not.
No.
I have, sir, in Caroline County, in our kitchen. It's a seamless poured troweled floor that is textured to prevent slipping. So it's very good for germ prevention. It's very easy cleanup with dishwashing liquid and water. They come in, they have a gas fitter, pipe fitter, plumber, certified electrician. They can come in, they can remove everything, they can put half the floor down, put the stuff back in, put the other half of the floor down, put the stuff back in with very little downtime for the kitchen itself, which is imperative when you have an area that is occupied all the time and we can't stop feeding the inmates.
The primary reason for the selection is this company is the only authorized installer of this product on the East Coast. That was another very contributing factor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hastings?
Just curious, who would be a competitor of Feature Flooring Incorporated?
Well, like we said, they're the only product we know that works in this way. So I guess that's why they would be the sole source provider of it, because out of the research we've done, we found nothing like this product that allows, like I said, a facility like the jail. It would be different if it was a facility that wasn't being used 24/7, but there's obviously different needs in the detention center that we wouldn't find in other county buildings.
You're saying as it goes, this particular company is the only one that does these kinds of installations in this region?
Well, they're the only ones that can do this product. Yeah, the manufacturer specifies what vendors in what regions, and Feature Flooring is the vendor in our region for the product that we selected. So it was a two-step process. The product first. Once we decided we did like the product and we wanted to move forward, the manufacturer then dictates what vendor you can use based on your area.
Any more discussion? Seems like every time we get something, it's sole source vending. I can't remember the last time we've opened something up for bids.
I can. If you want, I can get you a list of all the bids that we do throughout the county.
I'm just saying, I don't remember.
We
the
never
last
see
time we
them, that's
did
the
that.
problem. That's like this, you said you talked to another person or someone. We would like to see who you talk to. I mean, we're not saying we don't trust you, but we would like to see some other bidding or something. Just saying, I mean, I understand you say it's a good product, but it's just a good product on the East Coast, but there's got to be something else out there.
Now, I guess I'm confused with the question. Are you asking if we actually do bids in the county? Because I come to you for a
Well, all
few
of this
sources.
ties together. It seems like everything that comes in front of us is sole source vending.
Well, yes, we don't bring actual bids because we're not required to bring the bids in front of the council.
Mr. Holloway?
The rest of the things they bid, they're not required. You have to bring the sole source to it.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
The charter states that if,
Yeah.
so the reason why we're bringing these to you is because the charter states if we're supposed to do a formalized bid, which is anything over 25,000, and we deem it a sole source, we're required to have your approval. But anything over 25,000 that I bid out formally, as long as it's been budgeted, the council's approval's not required.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. Holloway?
I understand all your reasoning, and it makes a lot of sense, but I think that it would be to the taxpayer's advantage if this was researched more. So you're saying this is the only company that does this? There's no other product in the world or in the country?
There are other products, yes, sir.
But that works
The
in
advantage
this?
that this company has, most products are designed for a restaurant setting where they're actually closed, and we aren't. There are very few agencies that wish to come into a detention center, especially now in the COVID-19 era, come in, be prepared to work at the hours that we can allot to them, and understand that we are never closed, that we are always occupied. And that particular aspect of the process is the key. You can find another company that can do the floor, but you're not going to find many companies, in my experience, that are able to accommodate a 24/7, 365 occupied building that must continue to produce meals and be prepared to come in and get the product down, do a quality job, and be out within 2 or 3 days so that you have a limited amount of downtime and I don't have a riot.
So now we're going to have a riot if we don't approve this.
No, sir, I'm not saying that. I'm just, I could research other places.
I understand.
I'm sure there's somewhere in California there's somebody.
I was being facetious.
And as the warden stated, she does have experience with this product and with this company from her Caroline County days. So there is a background history there that knows the product. And like I said, the building is specific. Trust me, when this came across my desk the first time, like I said, I research everything when it comes across before I bring it to you. I seen kitchen floor. I got Pate involved and said, Pate, it's a kitchen floor. Well, then as we started diving down, there's reasons why the product is superior. And then when you do it that way, then the sole source vendor is dictated by the manufacturer. I can write a spec, but if I write a spec so specific to what the warden is needing in the jail, I'm then basically inhibiting other vendors from even bidding based on the restrictions that are put in the spec. So there are times where it is in the county's benefit to not go through the formalized bidding process, and this is one of them.
Any more comments? All right.
Mr. Dodd, could I just ask a question and make a comment that might be helpful to council and everybody? You can get a list of the RFPs that's on the county's website.
Absolutely.
So you can go in, I follow it monthly maybe. I guess it would be possible when an RFP is issued to just put the county council or the administrator on the list of distributees, and then you'd know each time one's issued. But that's pretty comprehensive, what's on the website. The other thing is just to find out, I mean, I would think council would want to know, is there an estimate on this or a quote from the company you're going to use? Do you know the amount? It just hasn't been mentioned.
Yes, off the top of my head, I don't. We do have the proposal actually from the vendor itself.
Was there an RFP put out on this or not?
No. Like I said, it came across my desk as a sole source request, and then we researched it from there. And
All right. Any more comments?
I'm sorry, I hope this helps. Now that you've mentioned it, Caroline County did bid out the floor.
yeah, but that wouldn't. It's been too long to be able to
Okay.
utilize that contract.
All right, no more comments. All those in favor, resolution number 100-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution number 100-2020 passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rice, Ms. Kohler, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you all very much.
Ms. Harley.
Thank you, Pete.
The next item for business is Resolution Number 101-2020. This is to approve Kevin Karpinski Esquire and Karpinski, Cornbrooks, and Carp, PA, as special legal counsel for Wicomico County on matters relating to a Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, grievance of the military time credit, and the DROP program. In accordance with Charter Section 507F, the county executive may, with the approval of council, employ special legal counsel to work problems of an extraordinary nature when the work to be done is of such magnitude as to require services in addition to those regularly provided by the Department of Law. And the acting county executive is requesting to hire Kevin Karpinski as special legal counsel.
I need a motion to approve Resolution Number 101-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor of Resolution Number 101-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Resolution Number 101-2020 passes unanimously. Ms. Hurley.
Next is Resolution Number 102-2020. This is confirming the appointment of Pamela B. Olin as Director of Finance for Wicomico County, Maryland.
All right, need a motion to approve Resolution Number 102-2020.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Holloway. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor of Resolution Number 102-2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, Resolution Number 102-2020 passes unanimously. Ms. Olin, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity that you guys are presenting to me, and I hope I can provide council information as they request it and to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olin, and congratulations. Ms. Hurley?
Mr. President, that is all I have.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, Legislative Bill Number 2020-06.
Yeah, this is an act to amend the 2020 operating and capital budget to increase the Wicomico Youth and Civic Center budget in the amount of $530,000 by transferring $200,000 from the Recreation and Parks prior year fund balance by transferring $75,000 from the Recreation and Parks current year budget savings and by transferring $255,000 from the general fund contingency. And this is I guess, a continuation, you might say, of this particular bill. And I've expressed earlier my concerns that I don't think the way it's prepared is appropriate under the charter.
I need a motion to approve Legislative Bill Number 2020-06.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? Do you have any discussion? All those in favor of Legislative Bill 2020-06 by roll call, Mr. Cannon.
Aye.
Mr. Hastings.
Aye.
Ms. Ackley.
Aye.
Mr. Holloway.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. McCain.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Legislative Bill Number 2020-06 passed unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Olin.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hurley?
Back to me, I think. Yeah, next for introduction is Legislative Bill Number 2020-11, an act to authorize and empower Wicomico County, Maryland to borrow on the faith and credit of Wicomico County, Maryland, an aggregate principal amount not exceeding $16,437,654, and to evidence such borrowing by the issue and sale from time to time for one or more series of general obligation bonds of the county. And this is, I guess, what we would call normally our annual bond bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Need a motion to introduce Legislative Bill Number 2020-11.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Holloway. Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor of introducing legislative bill 2020-11, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Chair votes aye. Legislative bill 2020-11 passes unanimously for the introduction. Ms. Hurley, do we have a date?
Yes, we can have the public hearing on that bill for October the 20th at 10 a.m.
October 20th at 10 a.m. Okay, thank you.
May I ask, is it possible to have it on the first meeting in the fact that there's 3 weeks between?
I'll take a look at the calendar and get back to you on that.
The reason being is the time frame to try to get these funds with the 60-day enactment. There's 3 weeks between this meeting and the next meeting. And so if we could have the public hearing and the second reading so that if it passes at the first meeting, then the 60 days run out at the beginning of December.
Looking at the calendar, I do think that is possible because it only has to be advertised twice. So we would be able to do it October the 6th at 6 p.m.
I appreciate that. It does, timing-wise, we need these funds for some of the projects for the school system. And so we have a plan that timing then works to be able to issue these, or advertise them, issue them, and have them be closed and have the funding available.
So to clarify, the public hearing will be October 6th.
At 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
October 6th at 6 p.m. Okay. This time, we'll open the floor to public comments. If there are any public comments, please limit the comments to 3 minutes or less, and any presented material may be submitted to the council members. You must include 10 copies. So do you have any public comments? Yes, sir.
Bruce Robson, Wicomico County. And I wanted to express my continued discouragement at the process of the county executive procedure. You know, we as Americans with great and justified pride talk about we're a country of rule of law. You know, but it seems to me it's not just the rule of law, but it's respect for the system. If we lose respect for our systems, our democracy, our county is in trouble, big trouble. And I feel like the way this is progressed, really leaves for a lack of trust, I spoke a couple weeks ago. I'm sure you've heard a lot, so you probably don't remember, but you hear so many people say, what's going on behind the scenes? We hear nothing. And what we do here is so weak as to encourage the thought that there's something going on here which is not good. I personally do not believe that's the case. But when I hear things like, well, I'm voting for this person and he's going to keep his other job, but other county executives have done that. When I hear things like, I'm embarrassed to change my mind. And then the one that really stuck with me, Mr. Todd, was when somebody at that Friday meeting implied there's something bad going on here, and the only response was, this is not the place to debate that. Where is the place to debate the integrity of this group? Where is the place? If you lose the trust of this county, then governing is very difficult. Would like to hear what is your reasonings for not talking about it, for making the decisions that you do make. I don't know. Is somebody planning to run for county executive in 2 years? I'm sort of dense, so it took me a while to think about this. Maybe there is something. Is there some deal about who gets to be president or vice president? Are you comfortable with these sort of thoughts, ruminations? I would ask that the transparency be ramped up here. Let us know what's going on, why it is you make the choices you do. Respect the system. It's not just a rule of law. This country has been around, they say, the wonderful American experiment for 250 years. And one of the only ways it will continue if we have a respect for the system, and our leaders have to join in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments? Okay, this time we're going to close the floor to public comments. Do we have council comments? Ms. Ackley?
Testing, am I too loud?
Red light's on.
So I want to thank Delegate Anderton for coming to our meeting today. I appreciate you being here. And I want to congratulate Ms. Oland and the Assistant Airport Manager for taking their new roles. I also wanted to just put this out there. If anyone in the Quantico area is interested in joining the Quantico Historic Heritage Society, they are reforming their organization. Please email me at my county email address, and I will connect you. Thanks.
Any more council comments? Mr. Hastings?
Couple things I just wanted to say. First of all, there was some good, some of the projects that we approved today with agricultural land. It's really positive to see. That's a lot of good acreage and a lot of good projects, and that, I want to make sure that that's continued to be a part of the Wicomico County ethic for a long time to come, is agricultural background. The other quick things I want to say was, of course, this month Wicomico goes purple. It is good to see a lot of the folks that are out there on the website, wicomicogoespurple.com. Has a lot of information on there, but it's a lot of folks have been putting out the lights, so it was really nice to continue to see. Last thing I'll say, health-related content. Of course, COVID. This disease. There's now 194,000 Americans have died from it. Over more than 1,800 Wicomico residents, of which nearly 50 have died. I take my mask off at the moment here, but for anyone who's watching, we do continue to take this seriously. So I just want to make sure that this pointed out. We do have the highest positivity rate in the state at the moment. Wicomico County does. And then our neighboring county in Worcester, for the last 3 weeks, has been the highest rate of cases anywhere. So it is still a big issue. This disease here on the lower shore, and hopefully folks in the public continue to take that seriously also. And then last thing I'll say is, of course, with the county executive process, Mr. Robson had some good comments there. It is always important for transparency. Regardless, transparency needs to be at all levels of government, from the local to the federal, and the American people are not seeing that as they should. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings. Mr. McCain?
Yeah, a couple comments. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the Maryland Board of Public Works approved some significant funding that will be coming to Wicomico County for Pirates Wharf, and that project will soon be moving forward. And part of that project is a boat launching, a small boat, what they call a soft launching ramp for small craft and kayaks and canoes, et cetera. I'd like to see us have a work session to consider naming that launching ramp in remembrance of County Executive Culver. He was very active very much in the forefront with Pirates Wharf and the development of that. And he also had a long history of boating on the Wicomico River, so I think that could be an appropriate form of remembrance that we could do as a council. On another note, I'd like to also see us schedule a work session. Actually, Mr. Basoda was here earlier, but we've talked in the past about county sewer and the issue around failing septics, but I'm just seeing that more and more becoming such a huge issue. Just someone being in the real estate business, it's just amazing how many times over and over again you see. I just dealt with this last week. A homeowner selling their property. It's a 50-year-old house. Of course, they test the septic system, fails. They're now looking at a $30,000 septic bill because, unfortunately, they can't go back with a standard system. And, and where they're located and so forth, they have to go with a large mound system. They have no room on the property. They're having to move buildings. So it just turns into this major ordeal. And, we've been talking about this for a long time, so I think.
I asked Ms. Hurley to get an update from Mr. Basoda on the county water and sewer study. And we were supposed to meet Friday, but Mr. Basoda can't be there, so we're going to schedule another meeting date for next week. So that is a priority.
Good.
And Ms. Hurley, can you make a note of the work session that he requested for Mr. Culver's name?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more council comments? Okay. This time, the council has received two applications, Mr. Carl Anderton Jr. and Mr. Lawrence Pate Matthews. And we also have a request for two applications that were sent out. So they have to be postmarked by yesterday's date. I also this morning got a phone call from Mr. John Hilton from the Volunteer Firemen's Association, and he stated that they are meeting regularly again on these Tuesday nights that we have our council meeting. So they extended an invitation to the council members if they want to start attending again, and it'll be at Westside tonight. So I know Ms. Ackley will be there. So with that said, to adjourn from legislative session and go into open work sessions, followed by a closed work session pursuant to General Provisions Article Section 3-305B1 to discuss the appointment to a position that the public body has jurisdiction to protect the confidentiality of the individual, followed by a closed administrative session pursuant to the General Provisions Article Section 3-104 for an internal auditor project update and to discuss the applicants for the county executive position. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. McCain and a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, Ms. Hurley, open work session.
The first open work session is the presentation by Dr. Brian Newton, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Services at Warwick Community College on the Economic Impact Scholarship Program.
Welcome. Can you state your name, your position?
Sure. Brian Newton, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Services, Warwick Community College.
Yeah, when you speak, you can take your mask down and look at the mic. It does pick up, but it's easier if you look at the mic.
Point it toward. All right. Okay, thank you.
Can you hear yourself now?
I can,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Well, good morning. It's good to be here talking with you about something other than coronavirus, which has dominated the last 6 months of our lives at the college. So I'm here to give the annual presentation on the Wicomico Economic Impact Scholarship Program, and we'll just give a few brief comments. You have a report that was provided, and we'll then take questions. As you'll recall, the Wicomico Economic Impact Scholarship was created in 2016, and we admitted 3 fall cohorts in 2016, 2017, and 2018. With the introduction of the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Program, we decided along with you to suspend additional cohorts starting in fall 19 to see what the results of the Maryland Promise program would be. With the 3 cohorts, Wicomico cohorts, we have spent a total of $149,087.91 on those 3 cohorts, and that leaves $62,912.09 from the original allocation you made of $212,000. At this time, none of the remaining students from the 3 cohorts are receiving WISE funds. So at this point, we don't expect any additional awards to be made to students who have already been admitted. We do have students that were in the cohorts who are still completing their education, but none of those students at this time are receiving county funds. They have gone to receiving Pell in some circumstances, scholarship funds in others, and promise funds in other situations. So at this point, we don't expect any further awards from the original allocation. Let me give you, as promised when we talked last time, just an update on what is happening with the the Maryland Promise program, because it does affect, I believe, or we believe, what happens with the Wicomico program going forward. If you'll recall, last year we had significant issues in the implementation of the Promise program for a variety of reasons. There were some legislative changes in the middle of the implementation of the program. There were regulations that came out late. There was a change in the application process. And so all that combined led us to a very small cohort of students entering in fall 19 that received the Maryland Promise. We had 32 students that were Maryland Promise students enroll in fall 2019. For this year, there were again significant legislative changes in the 2020 session. None of those changes came soon enough to affect the enrollment and promotion for the cohort that's entering, that just started here on the 9th of September. And we, in fact, are still waiting from the Maryland Higher Education Commission on awarding for students that have already started. And so at this point, we don't exactly know how many Maryland Promise students we will have for the fall 2020 cohort, even though college has started for the fall semester. You should know that the legislature made significant changes to the Promise program that are in effect now and will impact the incoming 2021 cohort, which is they eliminated the service requirement, meaning that the student no longer has to work so many years for every year that they receive benefits. They eliminated the provision that the funds will turn into a loan if the student doesn't maintain their GPA. And one of the most significant provisions is they expanded the program to all Maryland high school graduates and GED completers. So regardless of your age and regardless of the year that you graduated, as long as you graduated with a 2.3 GPA and are willing to go full-time and take 12 credits, and you maintain a 2.5 GPA, the program is now wide open to everyone. So we expect that we will have a greater influx of folks come into the program in the fall of 2021. All that combined with what's happened due to the coronavirus crisis and the economic fallout from it, the budget for the program, which was originally allocated at $15 million by the legislature, has been cut in half for this year, or about in half, to $8.5 million. So we are hearing anecdotally that and again, we don't have the final numbers, that the program will be fully allocated this year, and that students who did apply that were eligible will be on wait list. Now, we haven't received any notification in our financial aid office from the Maryland Higher Education Commission that we will have Warwick students who will be on the wait list, but statewide, it's our understanding that the $8.5 million has been used, and we expect that will be the case next year, that we will not see an increase in funding back to the original $15 million because of economic concerns that the state will process here in the coming year. So where we're at in terms of the county funds is the recommendation that we're making this year is that we utilize those remaining Wicomico funds to assist any students that have been waitlisted. And again, we don't know if there will be any or not this year. I kind of expect that there won't be any this year because, again, the program was not well utilized last year, and there really wasn't a lot that changed this year in terms of enrollment into the program. But I expect that as we open the gates to the program to more people in terms of anyone who's graduated from a Maryland high school or completed a GED, that we'll have more students for the fall 21 than we'll have funds to allocate them. So we are recommending that with that remaining $62,000, that we be able to take care of any students that end up on the wait list, so that we don't leave anybody in Wicomico County behind in terms of being able to afford their college education. And with that, that really is kind of the highlights of the report this year, and certainly take your questions.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Newton? All right. I did have one question. You were talking about some students in the cohort that were receiving it, and then did they get disqualified because they received other funds like the Pell Grant, as you mentioned?
Right. When you set this up, this was a last dollar funding program, so we look at all their sources of funding first, and we look at their income every year, so they have to complete the FAFSA every year. If their income had gone above that $75,000 that you set, that would have been a disqualifier. If they received scholarships or if they received promise money, it could have been a disqualifier as well. So we have just had the number of students who are remaining in the cohort that were receiving WISE funds completely zeroed out. So.
All right. And is enrollment down significantly at Warwick?
We're still processing. We still have dual enrollment figures that we'll process from the high schools. We have some figures with our Criminal Justice Academy. Right now, we're down, as of this morning, a few percentage points, which this summer we were looking at 20, 30, 40% down as the numbers were coming in. We have recovered well. It's still financially challenging because a lot of our non-credit programs are not able to run or won't, and certainly haven't run up until now. So we have a financial crisis that we're working through, but we've recovered. All the community colleges in the state of Maryland are down in their enrollment. As of the other day, and again, things change by the day, but we were the best of all the ones of everybody being down in terms of our enrollment, so we're proud of that. But again, certainly hasn't recovered us fully in terms of budget, particularly because of our non-credit programs, which are not running in many circumstances.
And I know that online classes can be a struggle for some people.
It is. We're having that challenge. I was just dealing with a student this morning who was having that challenge, and some students really like the in-person learning. We're doing a lot of remote testing, and that's challenging for students who really prefer to test in person, particularly students with disabilities. It can be difficult to test in a remote virtual environment. So it's a challenge, but we're proud that we're able to get the college open. We have about a third of the students who are attending classes in person, a third that are attending completely online, and then about a third who are attending a hybrid combination of some in person and some virtual and online instruction. So far that's working for us. We don't have some of the challenges that our university partners have with residence halls and those type of issues. So thankfully, we are just at the beginning of week 2, and so far we're okay.
Ms. Ackley?
Yeah, I was just wondering how your dual enrollment numbers compared from last year.
Yeah, we won't fully know until the end of this month because some of our, in fact, a significant percentage of our dual enrollment enrollments that are classes that take place in the high school come later on, so we don't get those figures right away. We do know that in terms of the last fiscal year, we had, I believe it was 575 dual enrolled students, which again is another increase for us, a very significant percentage of our overall of enrollment of about 3,000. So, and we are continuing to see increases in Wicomico, Worcester, and Somerset counties. So there's been, it's been a challenge this year. The schools have been working through their processes for reopening. They're requiring some actual time online at times that students would usually come to the high school or come to Warwick for dual enrollment. And so we've been working with those challenges with the school districts, and they've been very flexible. You know, it's just different, but I think in the end we'll see about the same amount of dual enrollment that we've had in the past, and hopefully parents are looking at that as an option as they figure out how to deal with learning in the home. It's a good option for students, even if they don't want to come to the college, to do that online dual enrollment with us at Warwick.
Hey, Mr. Hastings.
Yeah, it was nice to see actually some of the successes, Bria Melbourne and Brianna Wright and others who are going on to get their graduate degrees. Question I had is just on, are we doing a good job on promoting the program, or how well do you think we are doing a good job on?
Well, this program, in terms of the Wicomico program, we haven't been promoting because we had suspended the cohorts.
Right.
In terms of the Promise program, the promotion's been heavy, and particularly in this last year, because we had a low amount come in the first year. You know, we stepped up our promotion this year. I think the challenge has been, as we understand it, and there are a couple. One, the Maryland program, like the Wicomico program, requires full-time enrollment, and that's just not what we are anymore. We have 75% of our students are part-time, and they are working or they have other obligations, and so we have seen a significant increase in our part-time students over the last 5 years in particular. And so because that full-time requirement is there, I think that's one of the things that is a challenge for the program. There was pushback from some students and parents about the program because it turns into a loan, and there was the work requirement for each year that you receive the funding. Now, the reality is it was a better deal in terms of it did turn into a loan than what your student loan would be at the federal level, but I think parents and students didn't want to necessarily take that gamble, because if they didn't maintain the 2.5 grade point average, it would turn into that loan. And so as we've talked to high school counselors and we've talked to parents and students, we've had many that are interested, but we haven't necessarily seen them follow through. I think, again, with the changes that the legislature has put in place, I believe we'll now see an increase in the amount. Unfortunately, it comes at a time when they're reducing the amount of budget we have due to the economic crisis. So hopefully we can get those figures to return, because, again, I think the combination of taking away that service loan requirement and opening it up to all people who have a high school degree and had a 2.3 GPA will be significant. And also the Promise program is available for non-credit. So the licensure and certification classes that are taken in a sequence is the requirement. And so things like your certified nurse assistant and those type of classes, truck driving, et cetera, are classes that you can take. Unfortunately, the implementation from the Higher Education Commission in terms of the non-credit rules was even slower than the credit rollout, and so we haven't seen a real significant population come to us in the non-credit realm, and we expect that that will change as time goes on.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Newton.
Thank you.
Ms. Harley?
The next work session is a recommendation from the Department of Planning, Zoning, and Community Development to amend Section 225-67 of the Zoning Code, Table of Permitted Uses, to add marine supplies, boats, or equipment, sale, service, and repair. And we have Gloria Smith here from the Wicomico County Department of Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, Gloria Smith, planner with the County Planning Department.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay. We had this request come in for an applicant that repairs small boats and would like to add the sale of supplies and equipment, as well as doing his service and repair on a property in the light industrial zoning district. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the request and felt that it was a reasonable request for the light industrial district. When the Planning Commission reviews requests like this, they have to look at all of the areas in the county that are zoned light industrial, and in this case, there are only 3 areas. The subject property that the applicant's proposing is the one that has the most visibility to public traveling, which might be a plus for any kind of equipment sales, cars, farm equipment, whatever. The other 2 areas are more limited in visibility, so our point is that we might not expect to get other requests for this type of use in those areas, even though it would be permitted in those light industrial districts. When we reviewed the zoning code and the chart of uses permitted, we found that ag equipment sales are already permitted in the light industrial district, and by comparison, they might require a larger site and more land area for display of equipment than this request might require. The 2017 comprehensive plan recommends the area in question for commercial development. So at such time, if we come back and do a comprehensive rezoning to amend the zoning map to match what the comprehensive plan recommends for certain areas, if this gets converted to general commercial, marine equipment sales and service is already permitted in general commercial. At the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant and his attorney said that he is more geared towards recreational boats, so they didn't anticipate that he would need a large area to display really large boats.
Okay. You have any questions for Ms. Smith?
I guess just a real quick question, and thanks for being here today. So we're looking to amend the code, but didn't they just approve it via special appeals, the Planning Commission? I mean, do we have to amend the code to do this as opposed to, or I guess you're recommending just for future, correct?
They are, the request was to add this item into the chart of permitted, I think it's already in the chart of permitted uses. We want to add it to make it a permitted use in the light industrial district, as well as it's currently permitted in general commercial. So we're just, in the long run, we're probably just checking another box in the chart.
Kind of a short-sighted thing that they can put in there to begin with, probably.
That's what we thought. When we went back to this is actually, we're dealing with the 2004 version of the code. We've had almost no amendments requested since that code was adopted. And when we saw that ag equipment sales is already permitted in the light industrial district, we said, well, we probably should have included this as well, and just didn't pick up on it at the time.
Are there any other amendments to the code that you can think of while we're working on this? I mean, come to us at a future work session.
Not right offhand. It's been quite a while since we had anyone approach us about amending anything in the county code.
And if you have free time, you look through the code and think about things that could be amended.
Well, we can always go back to the county zoning administrator, Mr. Meadows, and see if he has any recommendations as well.
Okay.
Since he deals with the Board of Appeals and.
Sure.
Yeah, we sort of got 2 floating out there with solar and the DAF issue as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to bring that up earlier, but the DAF issue, the moratorium, where are we with that, Ms. Hurley? It's got to be running near the end.
It will actually expire next month.
November.
And we haven't had a work session.
October. It will expire in October.
Okay.
We did have a work session.
Well, early on, but it
yeah,
was-
last month, and Mr. Hastings raised some additional questions, which I did submit to the Maryland Department of Ag as well as MDE, and I'm waiting on responses from them on that.
So do you want to schedule a work session for the next meeting on the DAF?
Well, we probably should, because I said we're getting near the end of that moratorium. So, yeah, we got to figure out what we're going to do.
Or to discuss at the agenda meeting. All right, you good with that, Mr. Hastings? Okay, anything else? Any more comments? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Good job as always.
Thank you.
Ms. Hurley?
Okay, so the next open work session is discussion on the new public safety building And I believe we have Captain Todd Richardson here with the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office and Mr. Nick Rice, Purchasing Manager.
We can continue with the introductions. Nicholas Rice, Purchasing Agent. Sheriff Lewis, Gary Baker. We also have Pete Matthews here if there's questions that he can help answer. And then, like I said, this is the engineers that we've been working with on this project. All right, so we started back in 2018 with a feasibility study, which provided a starting point basically for what MW Studios went off of to get to where we are today. There's two phases to the project. Phase 1 will be the new public safety building, and then phase 2 will be bringing over emergency services and the 911 call center. The site was purchased back in November of 2018. There you go. After the feasibility study was completed, we released an RFP for the engineering services for this project. After that RFP, the results of the RFP were the award to MW Studios. We had a pre-scope meeting with them to kind of go over the logistics of how the project was going to go, and then ultimately sign the contract, I believe, in fall of last year. Is that correct?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that one of the key points is that we had a pre-scope to we had a pre-scope meeting prior to engaging in the contract at that time to make sure that there was a little bit of reconciliation between the results of the feasibility study and the expectations that were communicated in the RFP. And then from there, we continued to move the project forward. So, Evan, you want to talk a little bit about where, we have the project site. In 2019, we went through the process of looking at the feasibility study and evaluating the program, and quickly came to the realization that there were quite a few things in the feasibility study that required additional evaluation. There were some key programmatic elements that were missing in order to comply with best law enforcement practices associated with custody of evidence, sight and sound separation, protection of the facility, so on and so forth. And then there was also an estimate that was performed with the initial feasibility study, which we had addressed at that pre-scoping meeting, where we felt that if you look at national standards and national averages of construction costs for law enforcement facilities, the methodology in which the estimates were developed were grossly inaccurate. And so this was addressed with executive leadership at that time and discussed as a primary point of concern. And we went through the process of evaluating the existing program and developing a solution that we feel is, fiscally responsible in the sense that, we don't have a whole lot of unnecessary, actually there's hardly any unnecessary glitz and glamour spaces. Everything is truly based upon the function and necessities in order for a modern law enforcement agency to safely and effectively conduct business. So once we went through and reconciled, what the needs were, we discovered that there was, some shortage in terms of square footage originally, and then also made some strategic decisions, knowing that it was a two-phase project, to invest in some of the infrastructure today in order to offset the costs that might occur in the future for the phase 2, which is the Emergency Operations Center. And what I specifically mean by that is investing today in an electrical service that will support second phase construction in the near future would certainly be a wise fiscal decision for any entity, knowing that if you only serve the electrical service for what you need today, but in 2 years from now, you have to tear it out and replace it with something larger because you haven't had the foresight to know what was there. That would be a very poor, investment of taxpayer dollars. So we're looking towards the future in this and making sure that it's a long game, not necessarily a short game.
I have a question on that. Looking at the figures up there per square foot, phase 1, you got $260.77 per square foot, and then Phase 2 for emergency service, you have $390 per square foot. What's the difference?
So these are actual, so just for clarity, this was the initial concept study done by the architect that performed the original feasibility study.
Yeah.
They were projecting these at $260 per square foot, which quite honestly is probably the average construction cost of a commercial type office building. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree at this juncture with the estimated costs of the emergency services facility. In reality, the sheriff's office facility probably should have more closely resembled the original $390 per square foot. And we can jump to that in a moment, and I'll clarify that a little bit more for you.
All right, thank you.
So once we identified where, some of the miscues, if you will, in the feasibility study were based upon not only our experience, but, looking at some of our contemporary colleagues across the country that also focus on public safety architecture, we were able to reconcile the project, kind of bring it together, and we identified that Phase 1 would be about 58,000 square feet, and Phase 2 would be approximately 20,000 square feet. And we'll share the design solutions with you towards the end so that you have an understanding of how that square footage is allocated throughout the building. The other thing that we recognize, which is one of the oddities on the Eastern Shore, and I'll take you to a Western Maryland project that we're working on. We're dealing with the Maryland State Police right now on the Cumberland Barracks, which is under construction, and we're currently in design on the Berlin Barracks. And one of the things that we learned out on the Cumberland Barracks at the time was general contractor participation was a particular challenge. And to estimate construction costs in Western Maryland based upon a limited subcontractor network and a limited distributor network makes it difficult to price using, Washington, Baltimore, suburban metrics, what the actual construction cost might be in Western Maryland or even on the Eastern Shore, because we have the same type of economic conditions from a contractor and vendor standpoint. So what we actively ended up doing in order to make sure that the cost estimates that you see today are vetted in the realm of reality as opposed to an architect sitting behind an office pulling numbers from some catalog, we were able to engage Whiting Turner locally to assist in evaluating the construction costs and allowing them to give us a probable opinion of cost, which then back-checked kind of the next step, which I'll lead you to. So the project costs and where you see the project costs today and why they come into play is we've obviously had a nominal increase in the square footage requirements of the building. The site and the scope of the project is now fully understood. We've maintained that all code requirements, all best practices in terms of national certifications and standards for law enforcement. So this design solution complies with the IACP design guidelines for threat protection, for sight and sound separation, for chain of custody and evidence storage, so on and so forth. And this design solution also accounts for escalation, which previous estimates did not account for. They did not necessarily account for the time frame in which construction has occurred. The one thing I'll also point out in the current estimate is that the estimate was performed just around the time COVID started breaking out, and the most recent Turner construction indexes that came out for the first time since 2010 nationally show a retraction on construction costs. So there is a potential that the escalation in the current estimates, which I believe show 4%, could actually end up yielding negative 1%, but it would be fiscally responsible to anticipate that we don't really know how this is going to affect long term, and when this thing goes to construction, where things will actually be. So I would say that the 4% is a conservative number to continue to carry, but there is a chance that the estimate could actually reduce from what was previously presented, if that makes sense from an economic standpoint. So I know this is exceptionally hard to read, but it's data that we were able to collect and present that show about 30 other similarly sized emergency operations centers and police facilities across the country that were designed by our firm and many others, demonstrating that they have received some form of recognition in terms of compliance with national standards, and then showing you the project costs, the year it was built, the square foot cost, and then how many years ago it was built escalated out to today's cost. And when you look at this database, it'll show you that the historical average has been somewhere between $460 to $562 per square foot, whereas the feasibility study estimate was showing it around $260. And the reason that you'll see these types of facilities at a higher cost has to do with the comparative types of systems and construction that is in them. In an office building, we typically don't have UL 5 level ballistic glazing that is designed to withstand hunting rounds. We don't have independent ventilation systems to remove the smell of marijuana from the building. There's many specialty systems that go into these types of facilities that all play a role in gradually and incrementally increasing those costs to what you see there. So,
Before you go much further, because I can't see those.
Yep, absolutely.
Small numbers, I guess my quick question is that per square foot cost, is that just building per square foot, or does that include site?
Excellent question. So this is the blended average of looking at the total construction cost. So these in particular do look at site as a measure of that.
And take that one step further, is site acquisition part of that, or just site improvements?
Yeah, it would be site improvements. Acquisition for this particular project had already been completed.
It's a separate animal.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Yeah, so these are all based upon looking at actual contract values for construction for those individual entities. So moving forward, to give you a better sense of, we looked at some of the things that are driving project costs to give you an understanding of what some of those particular items are that maybe differentiate. So a generator and an uninterrupted power supply system capable of supporting the entire building during power transition or power failure obviously comes with a cost, and those systems have been designed in order to support the emergency services building, which would be inclusive of 911, which also has very specific code requirements in order to make sure that the communications center maintains operations as a mission-critical facility 24/7, 365, and is uninterrupted. There are provisions within the design that allow for the protection of the mechanical equipment on the exterior so that hurricane-borne debris or something along those lines doesn't take out the operations. And so all of those things are kind of taken into consideration. And when you look at the site development costs, to your point, we're looking at about $280,000 per acre. And this particular site is an excellent site for what we're trying to deal with. And that actually, in our experience, is slightly below average cost for the size acreage that we're dealing with. Some specific program elements that we think you should be aware of that differ from conventional building construction would obviously be the hardening requirements for holding cells and suspect processing, evidence storage procedures, and how they're managed, the public safety answering point and dispatch communications, and the lightning protection and electronic grounding systems that are required for that, the access control, the surveillance systems, and then threat mitigation as it relates to ballistics, terrorist-type attacks, and ballistic storm hardening. And we'll talk about how some of those features have been implemented at brief in a little bit. I don't want to get into too much of the detail because it kind of discloses some of the passive measures that keep the officer safe. But in fundamental, I think it's a good conversation to have. And then essential facility requirement. I think it's important for everyone to know that the building code by default establishes a public safety facility, whether it be a fire station or a police station, as a risk category 4 structure. And what that essentially means, in simple terms, is that in the event of a natural disaster such as high winds, this building needs to be the last building standing in order to ensure that it is there and capable of serving the rest of the community. And so with that comes increased requirement for structural design to withstand seismic activity, to withstand wind activity, snow loads, even though they're not frequent. I mean, we just had an earthquake in New Jersey, I think 2 weeks ago. So even though they're not frequent, we are part of a fault line, and we need to be respectful from the code perspective of those risks. So all those things come with potential cost impact. How the project is distributed based upon the estimate, for everyone to be aware, this is how it kind of all gets broken down. So we've got about 25% electrical, and what's important to note is we've identified some hatched regions, which are costs that are essentially being digested now in order to implement into the design to make way for the second phase. So they're nominal kind of guesses based upon the estimates that we have and an understanding of the strategies that have been put in play. But 5% of the electrical cost today, or 5% of that pie, is attributed to making sure that we're prepared for the second phase, and that the second phase can be done in a manner that is not disruptive and is cost effective. Any questions so far?
Any questions?
Any comments?
Ms. Ackley? No.
I just have, I have a question on the layout of the building. This is going to include the sheriff's department, the emergency services, and is this juvenile? No, okay.
And we'll get to, just so you know, I'm going to walk you guys through the design. I kind of want to take a second to go over some best practices so that we can frame how we got to where we are.
Yeah. And the juvenile building that I think you're talking about, isn't that a state facility out
Correct.
there? Yeah. Any idea when work will start on phase 2?
So we're at 50%. Oh, when work will start on phase 2? I think
Yeah, I believe the estimate was 5 years out when we first started this project, but don't quote me on that because that was, I believe, administration's decision on when to bring them over. But the number I
Think
heard
it'll
was
be
5
5
years
years.
from this construction. Obviously, that, can depend on a lot of things.
Okay.
the intent during the design early was once construction commenced, that design on the second phase would likely proceed, and that would yield you at that 5-year time frame that was mentioned. So just to give you some framework on law enforcement design, some of the trends, and obviously I can't even keep up with the trends given the past couple weeks and how that's going to impact things, but I would say that a lot of the things that we've witnessed across the country, we've developed design solutions preemptively that would mitigate a lot of those risks. But some of the trends that we see in policing and how station design plays a large role is first and foremost community interaction and connectivity. And I like to use this term of a transparent fortress. We certainly want the law enforcement officials and civilian staff that are working within that building to be safe and secured from those wishing to do them harm. But it's equally important to make sure that we get away from the police station design language and character of the buildings that, 60s, 70s, and 80s, where they were more penitentiary and look, and they were more off-putting as opposed to inviting and encouraging interaction with the community. And part of the other things is to make sure that the law enforcement officials within the building have ample opportunity to recognize personnel coming up to the facilities, react to that threat, assess what might be happening, and try to mitigate those risks before they escalate. And recruitment retention is another major issue, particularly now where law enforcement personnel across the country, nationally surveyed, are feeling less and less respected and appreciated. Quality place of work can play a large role, and when an agency brings someone on and puts them through the academy, they are spending a significant amount of time and resources on bringing that person up to speed. So a facility that kind of supports all of these things and at the same time can address the ever-growing challenge of crime lab needs, data processing as it relates to body cameras, dash cams, collecting all of that data and information so that it can be quickly released if need be. We've certainly learned within the past couple weeks that accurate information is important to release very timely before opinions can be rendered internally or externally without the facts coming forward. So all of these things kind of come into play. Some of the standards that we look at in terms of how design is achieved is conditions for work. Obviously, a certain degree of physical fitness is required for law enforcement officials. Sight and sound separation in order to prevent a juvenile. Again, this isn't a juvenile facility, but occasionally you might have them in the building. Is not interacting with an adult male, and females are separated from males. Training, particular training in this, one of the things that we implemented as part of the program was a training simulation lab for use of lethal force. That was originally not part of the program. And having the ability to train officers frequently on use of force decisions effectively can mitigate a lot of risk and certainly protect the community at large and the officers themselves from being better prepared and better trained. And then processing, there's certain provisions that we need to require in order to maintain the sanctity of trial and the custody of evidence. Preventing loss of that evidence during a potential fire or vandalism is equally important. And then all of the other kind of items that you kind of see there. So all of these things that come into play, we have to satisfy these minimal standards of care to make sure it's the last building standing, as I mentioned, and look at these concepts. And then obviously ballistic hardening as it relates to the space. One of the things of note that I'm going to just kind of skip ahead and jump right into the design is from a site design standpoint, we're also looking at engaging what is referred to as CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. It's passive design measures that allow for the facility to be secure. So by passive means there's no actual electrical components. It's by design we are working to mitigate the risk associated with the building being attacked. So Evan, do you want to kind of walk through the fundamentals of the design real quick?
Absolutely. So upon entry, if you're a member of the public coming to to this building. You are greeted with the front lobby, and from there you have direct oversight of the duty office. From there, the officer can, direct you to any given part of the building where you may be headed. The lower gold area is key administrative staff area and office space for the sheriff office administration. And then to the upper left-hand quadrant in blue is the CID office area for, and then above that.
This is your investigative division, your detectives.
Right. And then above that is the patrol office area. Patrol is directly related over to the red area, which is the Sally port. So in the event that a suspect is detained, the processing and occurs over in that area, and then any evidence detained is reviewed, processed, and then kept within the orange area here. And then if you look at the purple area to the middle, that is kind of the nucleus or the heart of the building. That is the PCO and dispatch. And at that point, incoming dispatch to patrol officers who are on the street is maintained and cycled through that space. And that's also kind of the working nucleus of how the building itself operates and the bulk of a lot of the hardening that is occurring from storm and a disaster mitigation standpoint. And then over to the right-hand side, we have a series of large assembly rooms. The first is a briefing room used for different press and media events, just to open up the transparency and communication from the sheriff's office to the public. And then over in the lower right-hand side of the building is the training room and EOC. So this is a dual function space where both training events for the sheriff's office can occur, and then in the event of, say a hurricane, the emergency services can use this building to cycle as a emergency operations center to manage that disaster happening. And then this is the upper quadrant of the building, or the upper half of the building, which is dedicated to fleet and evidence storage. As a lot of what the sheriff's office interacts with is the collection of evidence to be used in future trials. And oftentimes than not, that is vehicular evidence or evidence that is large and bulky in nature. So the idea is this holding area is for the processing or the further processing of that evidence. And then also the fleet and maintenance, just to be able to work on and operate and maintain a lot of the working vehicles of the sheriff's office that are in use, along with the general function of quartermaster storage and delivery for, the operations.
It also ensures that the essential resources that the sheriff has that are, rare resources, the command vehicles type things, the SWAT type vehicles, are readily accessible, readily deployable, so that, you don't have to brush off the snow before you go or anything along those lines. They're constantly tethered, and those are rather expensive investments that are now protected from outdoor environment. The EOC side, the PSAP side, again, relates back to the sheriff's office. Again, we have a garage, which is kind of shown in the dash, which connects up to the north on the plan. Bunk facilities shown in green to the north, which then support the 911 operations center in the middle, which kind of overlooks and has, it's organized in the way that supervisors are allowed to interact on the dispatch floor and make sure that calls are being handled appropriately, they're being recorded appropriately, and moving out. And then the front purple quadrant that you see up front is essentially where limited public access might occur, where you have the GIS support, the emergency planners, the director's office, so on and so forth, that all supports this area. You'll notice that the data center in this particular side, the big gray box to the left, is pretty sizable because of the amount of communications equipment that ends up going into a building like this. So fundamentally, from the exterior, we're looking at, at least in our opinion as architects, something that's not incredibly, we're not going to see this in Architectural Record or Architectural Digest or anything, but it certainly is something that we're proud of as a collective team here, that we think fits the image and the mission of the sheriff in terms of being publicly accessible, but yet, and inviting, but also durable at the same time. And this shows the first phase, with the second phase would be planning happening to the right. The vertical fins that you see there would be glass that works its way back into the EOC to afford natural light to enter that environment. And from a health and safety standpoint, and this is the back sides of the building and where that would lie. Some of the design features that I'd like to call to your attention from an architectural standpoint that often gets overlooked and I think is worthy of discussing. First responders in general, fire, police, EMS, and I think the ones that are often always the unsung heroes, which are your 911 operators that never really get the closure on a call because they're taking the call and handing it off. They have incredibly stressful jobs, and if we look at the rate of PTSD and suicide within those particular professions, it is significantly higher than I think we would all like to know or admit. One of the things that we know as design professionals and looking at our colleagues that have done some wonderful work at the VA is natural light plays an incredible role in boosting morale, productivity, and efficiency throughout any given agency, whether you're working in an office building or whether you're working in a hospital. And so all of this design is organized to allow natural light to penetrate the occupied spaces of the building. So natural light is intended to, satisfy a lot of those things, and that's why a lot of the design decisions were made. But at the same time, there's some underlying security things that exist. The duty office, as Evan adeptly pointed out, is located on center axis with the entry. So if I can try to do this sideways here. The duty officer has direct and long oversight of who is coming into the building. There's some unique features that we were able to work with the sheriff on. Off to the side is a nondescript door, and that door is a separate waiting and lobby area for registered sex offenders that have to come in and check in and do their monthly check-ins. And the reason for that is we need to recognize that one of the big challenges in police station design is population control. I've got civilian employees. I've got moms that are bringing, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts on a tour for the facility. I've got sex offenders. I've got people that are being released on a DUI or something along those lines. All of these people don't necessarily want to or should be interacting in the same environment. And so trying to control those populations to make sure that we're adeptly handling the public based upon their needs are there. We've got soft interview rooms so that a victim of domestic violence doesn't feel like they're being interrogated. So there's a lot of design features that have been thought about and implemented into this building. This certainly hasn't been done in a vacuum, and I would say that the sheriff and his team have been incredible in terms of being collaborative and communicating their needs and going back and forth with us to get to where we are today. So that's kind of where we're at. We're at 50% construction documents. We understand that there's been some challenges with the passing of the county executive and where we'll move forward. And from a site plan design, I think it's important to note that there's a lot of passive procedures. So you'll notice that there is a large amount of space between the parking lot and the front of the building. That is not without intention. The purpose behind that is to keep vehicles away from the building in case they decide to take a run at it, bring in some explosives, things along those lines. And none of the paths to the building provide a direct line of sight. You'll also notice that the sheriff's parking area in the back is actually shielded by the building itself, so that personally owned vehicles and departmental vehicles the building itself is providing protection from someone off-site that may wish to do harm. So lots of design considerations have been given, and we welcome the opportunity to discuss this with you guys.
The quick access points to Route 50 and what's the road that goes along it?
Yeah,
How
no.
many entrance points do you have?
If the top of the screen is north, bottom being south. If you look at the northwestern part of the screen to your left, that will be the intersection Eleanor Road and Commerce Park East. US Route 50 is but a few yards just south of that.
To the left.
There's two exits.
To the left.
To the left.
One off Hannah Mill and one off, I think, Westwood Drive. So that
Makes it easy for you guys to get in and out.
Absolutely.
Good.
And I don't know if you're aware, but on the intersection opposite of our building, they're building a brand new 7-Eleven right there, which will actually be sitting on Route 50, directly opposite of our building. There at the intersection.
And one of the entrances or exits, if you will, would be a little bit more nondescript to allow secondary use of resources. So for example, if someone decided to block or protest at a front entrance, it would still allow for response.
Yeah. Okay, good. Any more questions?
If we go right on Elder Road, Mr. President, I want to let you know that we're within a half a mile of the bypass.
Yeah.
Should we need to go east or go south? And we go left, we're immediately on Route 50 to go west on Route 50 or east directly into the city. So we're
Right, and-
geographically, we're centrally located. The bulk of our calls for service are actually on the west side. So that puts us right in the backyard and will cut down dramatically on our response times to our calls.
Right, and that's why I asked the question. I think it was important for you guys and for the public to know.
Can you go back to your front elevation?
Sure.
It's 2 slides back, I think. Yeah. And you're talking about the natural light, and you have a lot of glass. I guess my question revolves around the hardening of the building and glass.
Yes, excellent question. So obviously, ballistic glazing is very expensive, especially level 5. So ballistic glazing is rated from a level 1 to a 7. 7 is just, I mean, you're the president if you have level 7 glazing. Level 5 is designed to withstand an AK-47 round, 3 rounds within a 4-inch grouping, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I got to go back and research it, but I know it's an AK-47 7.62 round. We obviously don't want to invest in unoccupied space. So you'll see that in the EOC, for example, we've got glass up high, and we've also got glass down low. The glass up high is tempered glass, typical insulated tempered glazing that if someone were to assault the building and shoot that glass out, it falls much like the passenger side car window would. That way we're not investing in that level of protection where there's really no risk at that point to human life. It's all at kind of grade, ground level, windows into an office, and then once we get behind the building where there's windows and the site design itself allows for us to kind of encapsulate and protect the rear of the site. Windows that are not public threat are not protected. So we're trying to mitigate how much of that gets used.
It should also be noted that even in the non-ballistic rated glazing, it's still going to be Miami-Dade certified for hurricane resistance, basic wind speed, ground wind speed to 120 miles an hour. And so that stiffens the criteria for the framing members behind it, the gasketing, and then the frame and glass itself for, airborne missile impact.
Essentially a 2x4 at 120 miles an hour is the performance requirements.
Any more questions?
So what level glass is this?
So down low, if you see the door, anything below the elevation of the door is UL level 5. Anything above that is just hurricane strengthened tempered or laminate glass.
Mr. Hastings?
Do we have room for growth? And then also, what's the projected lifespan of the building?
So the projected lifespan, I'll answer the easy question first. The projected lifespan of the building, I'll point back to Pate on that because that really depends on proper maintenance. But if properly maintained, this facility should serve the community well over 50 years. And then it's also designed from a degree of flexibility. So the exterior walls are masonry, but we also recognize that we don't have a crystal ball. As much as we would like to have a crystal ball and know the challenges that law enforcement is going to face 25 years from now, no one thought active shooters would be an issue 25 years ago. 10 years ago, nobody thought police officers would be at risk of being exposed to fentanyl. So this particular design does have some interior masonry, particularly at the hardened areas like the holding cells, the sally ports, the evidence storage. But all of the administrative office areas, a lot of the spaces like that are stud partitioned, which would allow you to reconfigure that space with relative ease compared to many other law enforcement facilities that are nationally built around the 80s, 90s, and even 2000s that are so rigid that, it's masonry. If you want to make that 8x10 office, combine 2 of them to 20x10, it's just not economically feasible to do. From a site design standpoint, in terms of future growth and flexibility, it was discussed and determined that if any agency were to actually grow, it would only be emergency services, because if law enforcement needed additional space, it would probably manifest itself in the form of a substation somewhere else as time grows. But emergency services does have the capacity to grow and provide for an additional, I think, 10 call stations, which would be the primary point of growth, which would actually be the call takers based on call volume.
Wouldn't be our lifetime.
Yeah, right, and exactly, it's just a matter of making sure we don't cut ourselves short, even though we don't know what we don't know.
Right, and I think it was an excellent question. I do have a question, too. It seems like every year we're hit with a hurricane or a hurricane threat or a blizzard, and I think maybe the sheriff's department would think about setting up an operations center. And what about setting up a bunk room just in case you want officers there for a couple days? Is there room for that?
So long-term development, the conversation had occurred that when phase 2 occurs, there's actually bunk space on that side of the building where they could potentially share those resources if necessary. Short-term, meaning, hey, phase 2 hasn't happened yet, there's not dedicated bunk space, but we feel as if there's the EOC, for example, we've got some space in there for cot storage, things along those lines that would allow for that very infrequent occurrence, to address, and because you have those events, and then the quantity at which you have those events, which necessitates someone sleeping beyond their shift, are not quite as frequent as the events themselves.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Nice to have it. Okay. Any more questions,
I had a question, yes.
Mr. Cannon?
I'm somewhat confused by this project as a whole, because, you were talking about fiscal responsibility. As in the county, our fiscal responsibility is following a capital improvement program, 5-year plan. What I'm confused about here is that the project was scheduled, was projected at about $11 million.
Yes.
In the CIP in 2018, 2019, and 2020. In the 2021 CIP, which we just approved, the amount was reduced to about $10,589, I believe it was, or $10,589,000, a little about $10.5 million. The other thing is that in the CIP, over these past few years, there hasn't been any mention of an emergency services building. And what I'm really getting to is the fact of the budgeting for this project. What do you have? I think it's set up there, what, $28 million for the first?
Correct.
So what would be the second phase?
Second phase, I think the original numbers would probably be very close, anywhere between $6 to $8 million based upon what we're projecting.
Based on the feasibility study, they had it at 7.8 for phase 2.
And we're already digesting some of those costs on the infrastructure side today.
So why I'm confused about this, and don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anybody in this county that doesn't want to see the best for the sheriff and for the sheriff's department as a whole. It's confused me though on how we're taking this and how we're going to distill this down to what the county can afford. As I said, the emergency services has never been in the CIP. We just passed about a $16 million allotment for about 5 or 6 projects, one of those being the Sheriff's Department, which was $5.189 million, okay? So here's what and this is what it was really broken down to in every single CIP over the last 5 or 6 years, was that there would be an allotment of about $5 million and then $5 million over a 2-year period. I'm concerned as to how we're going to begin this project with the allotment that we just approved during this meeting about an hour ago of about $5.2 million. How are we going to go from that 5.2 to even the initial phase of 28 million? That's another 23 million that would have to be put into the fiscal year 22.
Yeah, I understand your concern. I think that's the impetus for really this briefing and this meeting, is that, not to speak too much out of turn here, we kind of raised the flag very early that we felt like, I can't speak to how the CIP was developed and where the numbers came from. I also can't really speak to whether emergency services was in or not. It was certainly part of the RFP and all part of our initial conversation. All I can say with complete transparency and honesty is that we had these initial conversations that we felt like with the previous executive, that we felt like the budget was inadequate for what the needs were going to yield, that we needed to revisit those needs because we felt like the needs themselves weren't necessarily accurate. And when we came back with everything and we did our initial briefing at that time, it's a struggle between letting the budget drive the design and letting the design drive the budget. And there are certain projects that I would 100% agree with you that, the budget must drive the design. And then there are projects where the design the parameters of required needs are the parameters of required needs. And we could certainly debate what is needed and what is not. But I would say to you that unless we're going to hack and slash the building and literally carve out significant portions of the functionality of the space, there's no golden toilet in the sheriff's office that's going to yield several $1 million in return on investment. So I guess my point in all of that is we feel in terms of fiscal responsibility in that statement, and I know how that could be confusing, is based on all of the needs that we've digested as a group, we feel like we've tried to stretch the dollar and achieve best value in the design solution that you see today. The only area that I think you could make concessions on to try to achieve even close to the budget would be significant square footage reductions. There's a potential to maybe introduce another phase, but that's the challenge that I think we face.
My understanding is, and correct me, Sheriff or Todd, that there's actually closer to 16 million total in the budget for this project currently. I understand that's still.
Yeah, you're right.
I understand that's still a shortfall, but my understanding on the original estimate, well before the feasibility study, was that estimate was based off of the city of Salisbury's police department that was built over 20-something years ago. So I think what's driving some of the confusion is that original number that came to be, I don't know how many years ago since I've been here, but wasn't really based on any actual studies or even anything that actually worked with what the sheriff's office needed. So
we approved in fiscal year 14, we approved $25,000 for an engineering study. In 17, we approved $100,000 for a project study. And in 18, we approved $600,000 for architectural and engineering plus the purchase of the land. So those are 3 separate years where the money was funded. I'm not sure whether it was spent, maybe Captain Richardson knows, but that's 14, 17, and 18 alone where we were doing studies. So to sort of suggest that maybe we pulled this out of thin air based on what the city of Salisbury Police Department expenses were, I don't know. I'm not privileged with that information. I don't know what we did with the 25, the 100,000, or the 600.
Yeah, the study that I was talking, the feasibility study was done in 17. I'm not sure when the original, if you say 14 was when the original money started being budgeted for this, I can't necessarily speak to that.
It was funded. I'm not saying that they actually did it. It was funded, though. And also, we purchased the land. We purchased the land, I would have assumed, based on what the CIP was projecting and what we were projecting in our budget. Not only that, but you suggested the fact of the executive with his passing. Well, the executive, before he was, I think, seriously ill in April of this year, is the individual who brought to this council a total $10 million project.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
I can see where you're going, John. When we got the first study, when John was president, it was scheduled to be 10 million. The gentleman came just like you did and presented to us, what was it, 23 million?
21 something, I believe, but yeah.
And they were supposed to go back and redo it. But since then, we've never been updated. And I can see why the money isn't in the CIP, because we've never been updated until this point. So I see where John's going with this, and that's the problem.
I understand that.
You drop it in our lap at the last minute. We never been updated throughout all of your planning and stuff, so that's why the money isn't there.
The only thing, and I can't speak to the CIP, I can't speak to the budgeting for the project, but what I can speak to is my working on this project. And as Rob stated earlier, when we started this project, it was known that the budget was going to be insufficient, but we didn't know how much it was going to be insufficient until we got a first cost estimate, which is in August of this year, we received this first cost estimate.
Yeah, but
so
nobody.
In terms of you being updated, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that we were told to update you, and that's what we're doing today.
Oh, late.
Mr. Holloway, and
you good?
You done?
You're good. Yeah.
I can also speak in terms of updates. I mean, we are committed to transparency as much as you guys would like to know. If you want monthly briefings, biweekly emails, or whatever the case may be to keep you up to speed on any future development, we're happy to do that. I just don't think that was our previous direction.
As when we build our schools, we get part of the money from the state. Has there been any actions to go to the state for any of the funding for this that the sheriff might know? Todd?
I don't believe
Anybody
so.
else? I don't see anybody from the executive's office other than Nick, but
Mr.
I didn't know.
Pasota's in the back.
Okay, John, how you doing? Way back there, John. I just wondered if there was any cost sharing with the state for this project, or if it had been approached.
So in my just experience in working with many law enforcement agencies around the state, including the Maryland State Police, is MSP, for example, is having challenges even funding some of their own projects right now. So the school construction fund comes from an entirely different source. I don't know of any other agency that has ever had success in cost sharing for essentially county services on these types of projects. What I can say is that as the project continues to move forward, there's not a whole lot of brick and mortar grants for these types of things out there now, but there are piece grants. So, and what I mean, that a piece of the project. We've been successful in the past of, achieving grants from the Department of Homeland Security for generators. And given everything that's going on now nationally, I would not be surprised if within the next 2 or 3 years, we start to see certain grants for hardening of public safety facilities. Wouldn't be surprised, no guarantee, but those are things that we're actively trying to track and see what may or may not exist in order to protect these types of investments.
And, Mr. Cannon, correct me if I'm right or wrong. When we first had that presentation, they included emergency services, but that was going to be a second phase, and I thought they said the first phase would be $10 million, and then the second phase would be another $10 million for the emergency services building?
Well, I don't remember. I think what the issue was and what the council tried to, communicate very clearly was that we were looking at sheriff's department, and we must have asked Mr. Strasburg 5 or 6 times, does this project include the emergency services? And there wasn't any definitive answer as to whether the initial project was going to include both. My concerns is really when this county came to you and asked you about this, and Nick, when you approached them about this project, when did anyone ever discuss the issue that there was a limit to the budget? This was a $10 million or a $16 million project, and with your experience as architects, when did you not finally realize that, hey, you guys are going 100% over your budget?
There was a meeting before the contract was ever actually signed where that was brought to administration's attention that the budget, and at that meeting, administration agreed that we were under budget.
Who was administration?
Wayne Strasburg.
In our scoping documents, as a matter of fact, the original proposal that we wrote the contract around, we actually went so far as to say, hey, we feel like the budget is insufficient, and without having gone through a program, if we were to take the exact same program that the feasibility study said was accurate, we said that we felt like the budget would probably need to be, and I'd have to pull it and see, closer to like 17 to 19 million. And obviously the program has increased after going through the needs assessment, which then would increase additional costs. But we raised that red flag before we even signed on.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that you've gone to this much detail and this extensive preparation, knowing that our budget is only within $10 to $6 million. That's what I can't seem to understand. This is the conversation we should have been having back in December of last year when we were trying to decide what our CIP was going to be, exactly how we were going to be budgeting this county over the next 5 years.
No disagreement with that statement. All I can say is that we as the architects were going based upon the direction that we were given from the executive's office, and I guess ignorance is bliss to a certain extent. We were under the assumption that all of that was being addressed and under conversation, and we were told to proceed with if that's what the sheriff truly needs. And he sat in on many of the presentations and design meetings to validate and make sure that this, there's no sauna buried in the building, there's no pool on the roof kind of thing. That was conversations that we were under the assumption were underway or being addressed. And
There were many conversations with Mr. Strasburg and Mr. Young when they were here, that my understanding was the additional funding was going to be sought through the CIP. When, I'm not entirely sure, but that was the direction that we were given. So we were basically told, design the building with the programs that's needed to make this building, like he said, a 50-year building, and we'll figure the funding out.
Yeah, I mean, we approved the CIP, what, 3 months ago?
Mr. Cannon?
Yes, sir.
I would like to add a couple things. First and foremost,
Michael, you may want to use a mic.
Can you go
I know-
to the
we can hear you,
mic over there, please?
just so the recording.
Mike, use a mic.
Unless you want to go to the podium.
Use a mic, Mike.
I'd like to say a couple things. First and foremost, M&W Studios did raise the flag a long time ago. I've been in most every single meeting, especially those in the county executive's office, not just the county executive, but Mr. Strasburg, Mr. Nick Rice, seated to my right, and or Weston Young. We've all been there. We were well aware that this project was going to exceed everyone's financial expectations. We were well aware of that. We firmly believed, based on comments made by the county executive, Mr. Strasburg, they were well aware of it, and they knew this would likely happen. What I cannot and never could accept was the disharmony and the lack of communication between the executive branch and the legislative branch. That's no fault of M&W. It's no fault of Nick Rice. It's no fault of mine. It's something that every member of this council has dealt with for the last 6 years. And this is what happens when you don't have that collaboration. We were well aware of what was going on. We welcome this opportunity to address the men and women of this council to bring you up to speed on where we are. This is what we've been waiting for. We've been wanting to do this. But I can't tell the county executive what to do, nor the county administrator. We have welcomed this opportunity. Now you know where we have been, where we knew this was going to take us months ago.
And I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Sheriff. I guess where we should probably go, the direction we probably do want to go here is not a yes, no. It's how do we do it? How do we get it done?
Well, from what I've been told of members of the council, there's no better time to borrow money than it is right now.
Yeah. Yes, I understand that.
I've been told that by several council members most recently.
Within our means still.
I understand.
No matter when you
I
borrow
understand.
money, it has to be within your means. And I guess the real direction I think we need to go to, Michael, is with the total cost of these projects that we're looking at, and understanding now that we're talking about the Sheriff's Department and we're talking about emergency services. I think this is where we need to start planning to put this into projections for the coming years. Now, we already have the land out there. I'm not too sure.
That was $590,000. That was of the $600,000 that you weren't sure what happened to. $590,000 that was spent on the land.
Right. I was more concerned with the prior 25,000 and 100,000. I knew that the 600 went to A&E and land. I understand that. But what I'm getting at is, as a county, what we're going to have to try to figure out of what to do is how we're going to spend this, what looks like maybe $35 million. How are we going to project this now over the coming few years to see how it can work in. No difference than this is getting somewhere to the cost of a school. The problem is, as Joe suggested, we don't have state funding as of yet for this project, which creates a greater burden on the Wicomico County taxpayers. So we're really going to have to think very methodically about, okay, how much money do we have to put in? We barely squeezed Mardella High School back into the CIP, barely, and that's with the understanding that we had the 10 million. I know the 16 million. I know that's a familiar term, but I only saw 5 and 5 in the CIP. But I mean, honestly, this is what we have to do. We have to look at what our projections are, where we are with our revenue, COVID-related revenue, and hope that those numbers stay strong. But we do need to sit down as a council with the sheriff and, whatever other parties might, and the executive branch, and say, okay, 10 million here, 10 million here, 10 million here. How do we do it? You follow me?
I do.
Yeah, because I don't see where this money exists right now. We have a lot of reserves, and maybe that's something we could look at. And I would like to say, hey, this is great. Let's do it. Let's get it done tomorrow. I would have liked the shovel to be in the ground a year ago. But I do think we have to really carefully think where we're headed because of the size of the project as it is today.
Well, we stand prepared to move forward with the men and women of the council and the executive branch and make this happen.
Sure.
The citizens deserve nothing less.
Well, I agree. I do.
And Sheriff, I do appreciate you having the presentation with Phase 2 with the Emergency Services Building, because it seems like since we first had the presentation, the Emergency Services part of it was forgotten. And now it's brought back up, which we do need to discuss that. So I hope we keep that on the radar screen too. So
Absolutely.
And I think to the sheriff's, when we first started this and talking about emergency services, there's two initial design decisions that we can make. Well, we're gonna proceed with design. I mean, right now, I'll tell you could probably cut $2 or $3 million out if you eliminated Phase 2 from the projections. But if ever Phase 2 were to come back into play, you're probably going to spend the 3 that you saved is now going to cost you 6. And so there was the wherewithal early in the planning to say, hey, this is probably going to happen. Let's make the wise decision now to make sure that the infrastructure is in play to allow a seamless transition to a plug-and-play type construction for the second phase. The other thing that I would just advise the council of from a dumb architect's perspective is right now we've got, Evan, 4 months left in design, give or take? 4 months left in design. We're sitting in a little bit of a holding pattern over the runway, waiting to land. If the council feels like you guys, within that 4-month duration, can figure out how to digest that within the capital budget, I would advocate that you allow the project to continue through design in order to capture what is right now considered to be a very favorable bid market. I'm not sure what that's going to look like in 4 months or 6 months if things start to recover, but when you're talking a project of that magnitude, 1 to 2, even 3% in inflation and escalation costs can be a significant dollar value. So that's just my advice to you guys on that front. If you feel like you can get there, I think even getting to the point where, hey, well, it's going to take us 5, having the document sitting there ready to bid would be better than scrambling and waiting for a decision to be rendered.
Well,
if you feel like you're never going to reach a decision and we've got a completely reverse course, that's a different conversation.
And I think we need to take you up on your offer when you said you're willing to meet with us, monthly or whatever that may be.
Whatever you guys feel comfortable.
Because I think this is something that we're going to have to be addressing, maybe not every meeting, but probably every other meeting, because as Councilman Cannon alluded to, we're kind of like the horse has left the barn on this project.
He's halfway out.
Yeah, he's halfway out, right. He's halfway down the road, and, and we're sort of now getting the numbers, and obviously the numbers aren't the numbers that were, quote, budgeted. So we got to start reworking this, finding a way to make this happen, and it's going to take everyone's efforts to do that. So I think it's going to take, kind of a constant meeting of the minds here to kind of rate this ship. And which I think, hey, we're all very capable of doing that. But to make that happen, I think it's already been stated, all of us got to start working on this.
And I think from my perspective, having been through this experience before, one of the things that elected officials often face are, serious questions about why a facility of this costs so much when I was able to build my mechanic shop for this, or I was able to do my house for that, and I'm able to do my office building for that, and I just renovated this for something else. I think it's incumbent upon us as the design team to engage with you as much as we can to educate you on the decisions, the rationale, the metrics that are in play, and the methods that are utilized, so that when you're faced with those questions, you can answer with accuracy and transparency and make sure that everyone understands that there's rationale behind this. And so that's our commitment to the council, is to make sure we're a resource to you just as much as we are to the sheriff and everyone else.
But we look forward to more frequent meetings with you to keep everyone updated.
I would say really your first charge is going to be meeting with Mr. Presota and Mrs. Oland, and having them sharpen their pencils and revisit this whole program, this whole project, to see exactly how we're going to make this work in what increments. That would be the first priority, even before the council gets back to the table on it.
Right, I'd like to see you all meet with the executive and the finance director and then come back to us. Is that what you're suggesting, Mr. Cannon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Holloway.
First of all, I want to thank you. Like you said, it's not going to be on the walls of any architect's office. It looks like a fairly simplistic design from the outside. I know it's got to get really complicated inside.
It'll be on our walls. We're proud of it.
Well, okay, that's fine. But you know what I'm saying. I guess compared to some of the schools we've built in the past few years, it's really a more simply designed building, I'll put it that way. But what is the square footage now of the sheriff's office?
13,000 square feet,
And what is the square footage of this new building?
58,000 square feet.
58,000.
Is that just the sheriff's part?
That is just the sheriff's office.
So we're
yes,
going
sir.
from 13,000 to 58,000.
That is correct. That's including garage space as well.
That's including, because
yeah,
you don't
if
have.
you-
Large garage.
You don't have.
You're at
much-
about 30,000 square feet on occupied space. And right now, there's really hardly any garage space of what you're.
That is correct.
Right.
And the garage space, as Rob spoke about earlier, will house our covert vehicles to include the MRAP, which is required through our 1033 program to be concealed and contained inside at all times.
Yeah.
The Maryland State Police have been kind enough to allow us to store it at the State Police hangar in Salisbury. We just recently moved it with the reworking of general services back to the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office. But it's got to be maintained inside a facility.
Ms. Holloway?
I think that's about all I have. I guess a lot of the increase in square footage has to do with a lot of the things that you have to put in there that you don't have now. I understand that. But what is so you have about 100 officers now, is that right?
94.
94?
Yes, sir.
So what would, I guess there's no way to project how many you'll have 10 years from now.
I hope we have more, Mr. Holloway.
Yeah.
As you well know, our population is about 105,000 now. SPD's allocated 104 officers in the city alone versus our 94 covering the entire city and the county.
Right.
So, but we'll revisit that at a later date.
And the square footage of the building, just for your knowledge, falls in line with, what Hartford County has on Southern Precinct for the population area that it serves. Now, they have multiple precincts. It falls in line with the needs assessment that St. Mary's County had done for their sheriff's office, which we were a part of. But it falls in line, they have almost an identical population that you guys have, and it also falls in line with Howard County, which was done by another entity for, I want to say it's District 3 or District 5, the amount of population area that serves. So many thousand square feet per officer is kind of how that ends up.
But you have to take into account, we've got five police agencies in Wicomico County?
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess when John said sharpen the pencil, is there any chance of cutting the square footage of anything to be done to cut the costs without cutting the services, I guess, or the quality of the building?
I would really have to defer to the sheriff back on that because we've gone through that conversation very early. So you had the needs assessment done previously, and right off the bat, we put that thing to the fire and we tested, is this what you need? What about this? And a perfect example of program sharing that we were able to capture, the sheriff needed a training room and emergency services needed an emergency operations center. But very rarely are the two used infrequently, and the sheriff can always get out of town, if you will, for emergency services to take over for an EOC. So whereas the original program, I believe, the original program called for two, 1,000 square foot spaces, we scratched our head and we said, well, that doesn't make a lick of sense. Why can't you share resources in that effect? And that was some of those compromises that occurred initially. So there's been a good bit of that spatial value engineering, if you will, that came into play, and there's a couple of other suggestions that we've made in terms of cost value engineering, and I know Pate has been involved in them. Like right now, we've got the I don't know if you're a Ford guy or Dodge guy or whatever. We've got the F350 version or the Silverado diesel version roof on there. We can always pull that back to the S10 pickup that's probably going to break down. But that's one of those things. In 10 years, you'd asked about maintenance cost. We can save $2 million on the roof system, but you're going to be replacing it every 10 years.
Well, I know from being on the school building commission for a number of years, we went through all that. I was just it's like John says, it's going to be it may be a challenge of what we're looking at. So
One of the things we did want, we wanted a bunk room. We wanted lodging at the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office for the very reason you said, Mr. President, but we decided to cut it because of cost.
Yeah, like another shared area is the fitness area. So in the large plan, for example, the staff entry is right along that bold dashed line down the middle. So emergency services and law enforcement will have the opportunity to use that fitness center together, as opposed to doing two separate two separate resources. So the idea of actually combining the facilities in and of itself is a pretty big space-saving effort.
And the Wellness Center or Fitness Center is one of the key components of President Obama's 21st century policing. So training and wellness centers and police departments.
And it also plays a significant role in cardiac arrest prevention, which is one of the major issues for call takers.
Mr. Hastings.
What's the gap? What is the amount that we think we, just to be clear, I'm not quite fully following how many millions that we need to essentially come up with. I don't, Nick, if you can answer that.
Yeah, based off of the 50% cost estimate, which is 28 million, the current budget is 16 million, so that would be a 12 million. Obviously, a lot of that can change given, 75% completion, 100% completion, any value engineering ideas, those types of things. But today, right now, it's 28 to 16.
Also, I'd like to point out, too, the sheriff's right. It is a great time to borrow. We are actually, obviously, we're going to head into a likely recession, and we are still the fifth poorest county in the state, but it is a great time to borrow. We need to take advantage of that if we can.
Mr. Cannon.
Yes, Mr. Rice, I had a question also. When the scope of a project goes, I said increases twofold, and when the project goes from, I guess maybe an RFP or whatever it's called now, what's the term now? It's still an RFP?
There's multiple terms. There's request for proposal, there's an invitation for bid. It just depends on what you're trying to do.
Okay. When you initially put that out there for the public and for the companies to bid, what happens and what is your obligation? What's the county's obligation when all of a sudden the costs go from 16 million to 32 million, and when it becomes a sheriff's office and an emergency services office as opposed to just the initial request that went out for just a sheriff's office? Are we not obligated to rebid or put a new RFP out?
No, this was done as an RFP, which allows for negotiations with the vendor, which is what we did with MW Studios coming into this. But the RFP stated the two phases. So it did state phase 2 would be in emergency services.
But the response that you received from the other architectural and engineering firms, were they budgeted within $32 million, or did they keep theirs within the 10 to 16 million?
Pricing was not included in this because we did not have a design. So this was done more of a design build to where we did basically we went off of qualifications and other evaluation factors. And then before actually awarding, we shortlisted, we had interviews with the vendors, and then we selected MW Studios. We then went into negotiations for the contract, and that's how we ended up. So it's not that they said the building was going to cost $30 million and 4 other architects said the building would cost $15 million.
And that is kind of the purpose why we showed the comps of other stations around the country, because I'm not suggesting, you guys are all very polite and I'm not suggesting this, I've been in plenty of council meetings where the messenger gets shot, and we want to make sure that you guys are aware that this isn't, the architect in terms of the big portion of the pie, we're responsible for maybe in terms of the financial expenditure 1/10 of one slice, but we are responsible for baking the whole pie, if you will.
Right, exactly.
And so when we were brought in, basically the sheriff handed us the ingredients and said, "This is what I need." And when we said, "Well, this is how big the pie is going to have to be in order to do that," and that's based upon previous experience and historical cost data, not just developed by us, but by many, many others.
Yeah. So this is basically a 2-step process. We will, once we finish design and depending on the budget, put out another request for, basically this will be an invitation to bid, because we will provide them with the construction documents, and we will ask for a lump sum price to move forward with a contract. It's difficult in a project like this to ask for a lump sum price because I don't know what we need until we sit down with these design teams and go through the studies. And as we said, the feasibility study was done, and it didn't take us but the first 2 meetings for MW Studios to come to us and say that the study was incomplete in certain aspects of it, and we might want to revisit certain aspects of it. So to answer your question, no, this was not done as a lump sum bid. The construction of the building will be done as a lump sum.
Our contract is fixed fee with the county.
Yes, but it wasn't bid as a fixed fee, is what I was trying to say.
It was negotiated.
The contract price was negotiated based on the information we had at the moment.
Could I add one thing, Mr. Dodd? Yeah, there's right now, according to the CIP, about 5.9 million that's already been appropriated. Now, if you use the Whiting-Turner 26 million and change estimate, that means we're going to have to either go to the bond market or take out of reserves about 20 million, round numbers. Now, we approved this morning 5.1 of bonding. There's another 5 million next year. Whether it makes sense to up this year's bonding to a higher number, as the sheriff says, this is a pretty good time to borrow money, is worth at least considering. I'm not recommending it, but I'm just saying it's worth considering.
Was that
because
legal
we're about
advice?
$20 million short of the 26
Mr.
million.
Taylor, was that legal advice?
That's just a thought.
Okay. Do we have any more comments, questions? All right, thank you, guys. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, sir.
All right, at this time, we're going to break for lunch and come back in 30 minutes.
Thank you, guys.